Hello everyone, John Adolfi. Welcome to the Lost World Museum, where we ask the provocative and important question, where do we come from? Apes, aliens, or Adam? And today we're going to talk a little bit about geology. Oh, no. This is not the type of geology that is boring. This is the kind of geology that'll make you sit up straight in your seat in school and say, why didn't we learn this? I'm telling you, earth science can be fascinating when you run it through two parallel worldviews to be able to contrast and compare the two. When you do, geology, earth science comes alive like nothing before, I believe, for more people than the typical minority that perhaps enjoy geology. And there's nothing wrong with geology. I was bored out of my mind till I learned about creationism. Oh, what does that all mean? There are two factions of belief. I'm going to call it like that. Creationism and modern day geology, which means the earth is 4.5 billion years old, and the geology that we see is for the most part that old, okay? From top to bottom. Whereas creationism says the earth could be 1 trillion years old, the original rock. But the fossil record, the strata that we see, and life on earth, including us, is all within the context of 6,000 to 10,000 years. That sounds nuts. Is there any way to prove either one of them? All we can do is observe what's in nature and then draw some conclusions. Can flood geology, as the creationists call it, and homeostasis or uniformitarianism, as the evolutionary modern geology calls it, can they utilize the same information, the same evidences, and build a case for each one? The answer is yes, they can. Yes, they can. I've been on this program before, and I've shown things like this. Let me back up. The creation model states that rock has to form quickly. Fossils have to form quickly. Consider that you've only got 6,000 to 10,000 years, number one, and they claim that the fossils and the alluvial or sedimentary rocks such as limestone and sandstone and slate and coal were formed within, well, it got its goings within a year's time and may have actually formed shortly after that as far as its solidified format. That means that limestone was laid down quickly, manufactured, so to speak, and laid down quickly during the worldwide flood and then hardened over the course of time after it dried out. Is it true? I've shown evidences of fast-forming rock. And there's an objection out there, and rightly so, about what this is. Now, let me show you this. You see this right here? This is a iron pipe from the Karlovy Vary in the Czech Republic. Very mineralized water over there that runs through their pipes in their city streets. And over the course of time, and maybe some of you have some plumbing experience or have worked down in areas where there's a lot of concrete above you, especially bridges, you'll see small little stalagmites hanging from the ceiling, 12 inches, 18 inches, 4 feet. And you know that they're not any more than 5 years, 10, 20, 30 years. This right here took 80 years to form. It's 3/4 of an inch of aragonite. Aragonite is a calcite family, and it's like a little bit similar to limestone. This is the stuff that you would see, even though there's some iron mixed in there, you would see in cave dwellings. Those caves with the stalactites, stalagmites, they say took hundreds of thousands or a million years to form. Forgive me, let me just go real quick to the caves. There's an assumption that the drip, drip, drip is what caused these massive cones coming from the floor and above, as opposed to a rush of running water in there, all mineralized, forming these massive cones and then leaving the area, and the drip, drip, drip continues. That which we can measure, that we can measure. But if a massive amount of water sloshed around there for 100 years, 200 years, we would see these kind of formations. Well, what kind of forces throughout the world in these underground caverns would form that? Worldwide flood. At least let's put it on the table to consider. But the problem is that it's like banned for consideration because it points to a creator, and that is anathema or banished, stricken when dealing with just natural forces. Natural forces requires no God. Natural forces excludes a God for the most part. There are some people that do adapt both together. I get it. So we weren't there to observe inside the caves. We weren't there to observe when limestone was made. All we can do, like a crime scene investigator, is to ask the question, what could possibly have been the forces that would create? You ready for this? In Glen Rose, Texas last year, we looked at dinosaur tracks similar to this. This was taken out of the Glen Rose area. Now, this is not limestone. It's painted to look like it. It's plaster. But this was an actual dinosaur cast or imprint that was in limestone. Limestone. Now, I'm not going to talk about the date of dinosaurs. What I am going to suggest here is a little bit deeper into geology, but interesting. Do you see the impression that this made? Naturally, when this impression was made, the limestone was mud. Now, how do you get blankets of muddy limestone? And look up the ingredients of what limestone is, okay, first. And then ask the question, how does limestone come and create this huge carpet of limestone? And I'll tell you something, I have video of it, but I measured the limestone. Do I have my ruler? I have some dinosaur prints that were 13 plus inches deep. What brings in 14 to 16, let's just say that's it, okay? 14 to 16 inches of mud limestone so that a dinosaur could put his footprint in it, come out, preserve it, and then what, 65 million years later, we uncover it? Okay, let's just, for the benefit of the doubt, let's say it is 65 million years. Just for that part. I don't believe it is, but let's just say. The question is, though, how does an entire foot of limestone mud appear on the scene, okay, through natural causes, slow geology? The dinosaur print doesn't, like, dissipate, and we got to account for all that mud. I mean, how do you do that? A worldwide flood context would answer that question. The mud would come in, and we would see layers of it, and we do. In the Paluxy River, there's at least 4. Maybe there's more. You see limestone, then something in between, limestone, something in between, limestone. 4 separate layers of limestone, dinosaur prints in each one of them. How can that be? How can limey mud? Well, anyway, I think you get the idea. But some have said, look, your proof of fast-forming rock is nothing more than minerals, crystals. Do you know what stone is? Now, granted, I may not be able to give you an example of a fast-forming sandstone, at least not right at the moment. But let me show you something. This is sandstone. Okay? Look at those beautiful layers. Were those laid down through millions of hundreds of thousands or thousands of years? Or was this sloshing around and within weeks, months, this was laid down like this? Now, look. This is hard sandstone. Do you know what the definition of a stone is? 1 or more minerals. What's sandstone made of? How about sand? Little individual sand particles pressed together, heated, pressure, voila. This doesn't prove anything, but what it does do is give us a few more pieces of the puzzle as we look at the crime scene and ask the question, was it a worldwide flood in a very intense, short period of time, or was it long periods of time with slow erosion, accretion, meaning that it's adding to, and that's how this was formed. Let me show you one more example. This right here is an iron pipe. This was taken out of the northwest of the United States. Hot mineralized water went through it. You know how long it took to form that? If I showed you a geode, you would say hundreds of thousands of years. This took 6 months to form. 6 months. Take a good look. 6 months. In the oil fields, when they're looking for gas, when they're looking for natural gas, this pipe right here had to be replaced because within a very short period of time, limestone like calcite, limestone, whatever kind of material gets, the moisture in there with the minerals turns to stone, friends. Stone. Coal is supposedly upwards of 300 million years old. You know what this is composed of? Mainly of plant material, bark, twigs. And they say that this is caused by a swamp. Man, if you had to account for all of the seams, how deep they are, how thick they can be, just take a look at it and then ask the question. Even with the 3-to-1 ratio that they say is what the compression is necessary to make this. So the compression of material would be up to here, pressed down to this. I think it's more, but this also could have been done during a worldwide flood. Why do you say that? Because during the worldwide flood, you had lots of water, lots of minerals, lots of heat, and pressure. Stuff that's been buried in the ground. I mean, when those layers went on, they went on quick and they went on profoundly. And this was buried deep in the ground and a lot of pressure in the process. All I'm saying is that there is another viable explanation that's worthy of your time to explore to whatever degree you want to, in order to get a second opinion with a completely different approach to it. And then earth science will completely blow you away. One more thing. When it comes to fossils, the question again is, how long does a fossil, which is infused in a rock, because it's replacing or surrounding the cells in an entity. Take this fish, for instance, okay? When you bury this fish, how long does it take to become a fossil? Well, typically you think in terms of hundreds of thousands, million years in order to become the fossil, let alone the fossil's age. So it may take, just throwing this out there. You'd be hard pressed to find it, by the way, when you look on the internet for how old or how long does it take to create a fossil. So let's say this takes 100,000 years, but this fossil right here is 200 million years old. Okay, would be a kind of one way of chronicling the age and the process of it becoming a fossil. Understand that when you shove this deep into the mud, and they did that one time, they took a cage of catfish that were dead and they shoved it 6 feet in the mud. I don't know if it was 6 days later, they pulled the cage out and there was nothing there. Nothing. And this was inside of a cage protected, and it was 6 feet in the mud. Okay, suddenly, and still it came up zilch. Look at the detail and ask yourself the question, does this need to fossilize? First off, it needs to be buried quickly, profoundly, and not in some mud, not a little layer of mud or whatever. It's got to be buried quick. It's got to be sealed off from any air or environment or anything getting at it, and then it's got to be buried deep. So the pressure begins this process and the heat and the mineralization. And look how beautiful that is. The detail, friends, the detail gives it away if this was a crime scene. The detail of this fish tells me that it was not only buried quickly, but I believe from what I'm seeing here, the process had to happen quickly. How fast? Well, there are some proponents of this that say days, weeks, months. That's how long it takes. Let me ask you this. How quickly do you got to bury something like that and protect it? Look how delicate this is. And yet, look at the fossil. It says it's from the upper Jurassic period, so this is like really old. And let me ask you one other thing, and I'm just going to put a bugger in your ear. Does that look like a shrimp? Like you would find in the supermarket today? That's another thing for another story. Okay, those of you that have stuck around this long, I know that you're probably interested in maybe knowing a little bit more. If you'd like to get a little chummy with us, I've got a text number I'm going to put up here. It's also going to be down in the description. And here it is, 315-509-9075. And when you text that number, you just say, "Hey, John," and I'll say, "Welcome to the museum text group." Just before we went on YouTube Live, I texted the 256 people that are currently in there and let them know with a link that I'm going live. So maybe a couple of times a week you'll hear from me. And any questions you have, I'm happy to answer them via text. So there you go. That's for those who want to get a little more chummier. All right, very good. So thank you for joining us on this live. And remember, when looking at all of this evidence, ask the question, where did we come from? Was it apes, aliens, or Adam? And you guys have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us.